Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Supreme Court. Trump must respond to special counsel's presidential immunity petition before Christmas. The court's next scheduled conference date for consideration is January 5th. Jack Smith, the prosecutor in the Trump so-called insurrection trial, which is the 14th Amendment, which he's hoping to disqualify him, they want to start in March, just a couple of days before Super Tuesday. Again, just a coincidence, right? Just a coincidence. As President Trump gets closer and closer to winning the nomination, it makes it pretty much safe that that trial for the so-called insurrection will be after the presidential election. They want to interfere with the presidential process. Jack Smith, along with the others, are afraid that as President Trump is reelected, he can pardon himself and a whole lot of other people, too, that they're after for no reason. But let's listen to Jonathan Turley, and then we'll read the article concerning this.
Jonathan Turley, constitutional law attorney and a Fox News contributor. Professor Turley, I want to ask you about Hunter in just a second. But first of all, to this action that Jack Smith, the special counsel, took earlier today, filing a petition with the Supreme Court to determine whether or not Donald Trump has immunity from prosecution. He's trying to keep his case on track for a March start, which is just a couple of days before Super Tuesday. What's your read of all of this?
Well, it's not that this has never been attempted before, but it is not the regular order of things. Smith had just filed, or this matter was just filed before the D.C. Circuit. And then he decided that he wanted to leapfrog over the Court of Appeals and go directly to the Supreme Court. The only reason for that is that he is really focused entirely on trying Trump during this campaign and trying to convict him before the election. The question is whether...
And that's exactly what they need. They're trying to interfere with the election. It's so obvious. Now, the immunity you're talking about is, does the president have immunity after he's not in office? They're trying to make the case for the so-called insurrection that he started the riot with his speech, that he was president when he did it. Therefore, he's immune to prosecution. It's an interesting legal theory, but in essence what they're trying to do is they're trying to harm Trump as much as they can so he doesn't get the nomination. And I'll tell you the truth, if he doesn't get the nomination, they'll probably drop all the charges, or they just won't pursue them anymore. It's amazing. Let's listen a little bit more.
The Supreme Court's going to feel that that is such an urgent priority that you actually bring this case before Super Tuesday. Usually the Supreme Court likes to hear from multiple Court of Appeals. They certainly want normally to hear from at least one on these issues. And so they may not have the same sense of priority as Smith, who seems almost obsessed with trying Trump before the election.
Is there any other reason other than politics to want to do that?
Well, there's a tactical reason. If Trump wins, he can pardon himself, and then Smith will never see a jury in this case. I mean, so if Trump does prevail in the election, if he's not convicted at that point, he can give himself a preemptory pardon. He doesn't have to wait for the trial.
All right. So let's get on.
Now, another interesting factoid as we read the article. Supposedly, it's kind of a double jeopardy in a way, and I'll tell you what I mean. The Democrats, of course, when they took over the Congress, the House, impeached President Trump twice. One of the impeachments was a so-called insurrection, and then it goes to the Senate for trial. In essence, the House of Representatives is the grand jury, and the U.S. Senate is the jurors, and he was found not guilty. They're trying to say, listen, he's already been tried for this once and found not guilty. So there's a lot of balls being juggled here in the air. They just want to get him a guilty plea before the end of the primary process, period, preferably before the election. He wins the nomination, he'd be basically untouchable. The Supreme Court has indicated that it will expedite consideration of a petition by special counsel Jack Smith and whether former President Donald Trump can be prosecuted on charges he plotted to overturn the 2020 election results. He's already tried for that. It's not true. Smith made his request for the court to act with unusual speed to prevent any delays that would push back the trial until after next year's presidential election. Now, the deal is, normally in something like this, the Supreme Court will wait until it goes through the appeals process in the lower federal courts. Very much like when they when they put down Roe v. Wade, I forgot the actual name of the case. I think it was a southern state versus somebody. And it went through the process, the district court and then the circuit court, and then, it goes up higher and higher until the Supreme Court hears it. And only 4 Supreme Court justices need to sign on it to hear it. So maybe they want to go through the process. If that's true, and they don't rule on Jack Smith's immunity question, that means they want it to go through the appeals process and through the courts, which would take months and months, well over a year, and it'll be after the election. They know already that Trump, at this point, how it looks like he's going to win, and then they can't get him. This is all about election interference. Trump's trial in the election interference cases begins to set in March. The court has asked Trump's lawyers to respond to the special counsel's motion by next Wednesday, December 20th, 2 days later than Smith had requested. The court's next scheduled conference date for consideration of such matters is January 5th of next year. The court's brief order did not signal what it ultimately would do. A federal judge ruled the case could go forward, but Trump said he would ask the federal appeals court in Washington to reverse that outcome. That's the first appeal as it goes through the process. Normally what the Supreme Court does before it gets to them. Smith is attempting to bypass the appeals court, the usual next step in the process, and have the Supreme Court take up the matter directly. Time is not on his side, because this isn't about prosecuting someone who broke the law. This is about changing who ends up being president and taking someone out of the nomination process. It's kind of interesting how he's supposedly being tried for overturning the election, but at the same time, these guys are doing it as election interference. It's fascinating. This case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy: whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution or crimes committed while in office, or is constitutionally protected from federal prosecution when he has been impeached but not convicted before the criminal proceedings begin, the prosecutors wrote. He was not just not convicted, he was found not guilty by the U.S. Senate. Trump's presidential campaign criticized Smith for trying to go around the appeals court. Yeah, they want to speed this up. Time is not on their side, the prosecutors, that is. There's absolutely no reason to rush this sham to trial except to injure President Trump and tens of millions of his supporters. President Trump will continue to fight for justice and oppose those authoritarian tactics, the campaign said in a statement. The court is next scheduled to meet privately on January 5th, like I said, of next year. It's unclear whether they will continue sooner or take up Smith's request. They could just say no, let it go through the appeals process, which they like. They want this system to work itself through. They very rarely intervene in a matter this quickly, as they shouldn't. At issue is his number one ruling from U.S. District Court Tanya Chutkan that rejects the arguments by Trump's lawyers that he's immune from federal prosecution. In her order, Chutkan wrote that the office of the president did not confer a lifelong get-out-of-jail-free pass. Former presidents enjoy no special conditions on their federal criminal liability, the judge wrote. Defendant may be subject to federal investigation, indictment, prosecution, conviction, and punishment for any criminal acts undertaken while in office. That's why little people that are older, just to make sure that was in place when President Nixon resigned and Gerald Ford was sworn in as president, he immediately pardoned. President Ford was pardoned. President Ford pardoned President Nixon. Boy, it gets confusing. And that just cleared the air. And that way there would be no trial. There wasn't going to be anyway. him resigning was enough. If the justices get involved, they would have an opportunity to rule for the first time on whether ex-presidents enjoy immunity from prosecution. Justice Department policy prohibits the indictment of a sitting president. Trump lawyers, meanwhile, said he cannot be charged for actions that fell within his official duties as president, a claim that prosecutors have vigorously rejected. If it's under your official duties, as in getting a clean and fair election, yeah. Whether it's you as the candidate or not is a different issue. Smith's team said he would not be an opportunity to consider and resolve the question in his current term if the court did not expedite the matter. Yeah, then they take a summer recess. They just go for a short time, then a summer recess, and we're talking going to be close to late summer, early fall, which we all know is right before the election. The United States recognizes an extraordinary request as an extraordinary case, the prosecutors wrote. The court should grant certiorari and set a briefing schedule which would permit the case to be argued and resolved as promptly as possible. Prosecutors also asked the court to take up Trump's claim as already rejected by Chutkan. They cannot be prosecuted in court for conduct for which he was already impeached and acquitted, found not guilty, before Congress. That would be the U.S. Senate. Trump faces charges accusing him of working to overturn the results of the 2020 election. He lost to Democrat Joe Biden before the violent riot by his supporters of the U.S. Capitol. He has denied any wrongdoing. Those of you that are in the middle of the road or hate Trump's guts think that he asked then Vice President Pence to overturn the election, take the electoral votes from certain states, mostly swing states, and swing them over to the Republican side, which would have been him. He did not ask him to do that. The legislatures for those swing states, those key swing states that would have changed the result of the election, their legislators in those states were crying foul. They already certified the electoral votes from those states, but the legislature said we want to review them again before we make our final determination. So all President Trump did was ask then Vice President Pence, to say, listen, we're not sure. We're not going to count these swing states electoral votes for anyone until their legislators okay it. And that was the crux of anything. That was it. If the justice decided to step in at this point, Trump's appeal could continue at the U.S. Court of Appeals for District of Columbia Circuit. Yeah, good luck there. Smith has asked for quick review there, but then said even a rapid appellate decision might not get to the Supreme Court in time for review and final word before the court's traditional summer break. Yeah, which means he's going to go through all the primary process and will be the nominee of the Republican Party. And that's what he doesn't want. He doesn't want that. He wants Trump gone. These prosecutions are election interference. I mean, the one in New York about falsifying the net worth of your buildings to a bank is laughable. Even the bank came to the trial and said, hey, we do our own due diligence. When we give out loans, we just don't take the word of the person that's applying for the loan. Duh. Everybody that's ever gotten a mortgage knows that. It's incredible to me. Incredible. And then when President Trump, on the cover sheet of the financial statement, said, this is our opinion of what these properties are worth that we're getting mortgages on, but do your due diligence and don't take our word for it, the judge wouldn't allow it to be administered in court and put it in as evidence. It's incredible to me. This whole thing is just a freaking fiasco. So we're going to see what the Supreme Court does. I know they don't like to interfere in things like this, but they may have to. This is unprecedented. This is all new ground. Who knows which way the sword's going to fall? My gut tells me that the Supreme Court will say, you know, we're not going to rule on this immediately. We're going to let it go through the process of the appeals court through the federal system, as we've always done, and that's what we like to do before it gets to us. We'll see, but my gut tells me that's what's going to happen. What do you think? Until the next time, goodbye, God bless, and good luck.